But my question for you, have concerns about a potential recession increased in the president's mind, given what we're seeing globally?
Here's what I will say, and the president talked about this a little bit on Monday during his event. So he wants the American people to know, because of Americans' resilience and the economic strategy that we have pursued for the past 19 months, the United States of America is a stronger position than any other country to navigate these global challenges. And that's just period. That's the way we see it. That's the way his economic team sees it. And that's because jobs are up, incomes are up, people are back at work, and American manufacturing is roaring back, up to close to 700,000 new jobs just this past 19 months. And let's not forget the legislation wins that you have seen from the Democrats in Congress. When you think about the Inflation Reduction Act, that's just going to help us lower prices for the American people. So of course we are always watching closely, and we will continue to watch closely. As you stated, the president will meet with his senior members of his economic team, and he met with them on Friday. He will meet with them again today to get an update on the global economic developments, as he regularly does. But we feel like we are in a very strong position to weather these global challenges. So in attendance, I can share that with you. It's going to be the president's senior economic team, including secretaries of Treasury, Commerce, and Energy, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors.
Okay, Michael.
Thanks, Corinne. Obviously, the president spoke with the three Tampa area mayors yesterday, but the storm took a turn to the south last minute. So has the president spoken with any of the mayors being directly impacted by landfall?
So I don't have any calls to preview at this time. Once we do, we will preview those calls. As you know, and we say this all the time, is our team is in regular touch with local officials on the ground, especially at this time. As we've heard from FEMA and the administrator and her team, they are on the ground trying to help in every way possible. And we have put the full force of the federal government when it comes to making sure the people of Florida have the resources they need. I just listed out at the top of the briefing on all of the kind of resources, manpower, women power that's on the ground, water, food, and we will continue to move in that direction, making sure that the folks of Florida get what they need. If we have any calls to read out, we will surely share that with all of you.
And speaking of federal resources, the governor is asking the Defense Department to provide additional airlift capacity in anticipation of a massive high water recovery effort. Are you aware of that request, and do you expect it to be granted?
So I've heard some reporting on that request. I would have to check with our team to see where we are with that particular request from the governor. But again, the president has been very clear. He is going to do everything that he can. His administration, the federal agencies who are closely involved and aligned with Florida government to make sure that we deliver what they need. This is a critical time. We are praying for the people of Florida, but of course they have the full support of the federal government at this time as well.
I'm sorry to have to do this, but I'm compelled to ask you to go one more time back to the question about Congresswoman Walorski.
I'm not sure why. Why one more time?
Frankly, honestly, I think the memory of the Congresswoman and history requires some clarity here. Can you explain where the mistake was made? Was the president confused? Was something written in the teleprompter that he didn't recognize? Can you just help us understand what happened?
I mean, you're jumping to a lot of conclusions. No, but I hear you, Stephen. I'm answering the question that you're jumping to a lot of conclusions. I just answered the question. If that had been the case, I would have stated that, right? I would clearly have stated what you just laid out. What I had said is that she was on top of mind, and that he is going to see her family in just 2 days' time on Friday to honor her work, to honor her legacy, if you will. I've just mentioned this. It's going to be a renaming of a VA clinic in Indiana in her name, and that is what he was thinking of. He was thinking about her as he was naming out and calling out the congressional champions on this issue, on this really critical issue that's going to help millions of Americans. And that is what the president was focused on.
Would you be prepared to release the prepared remarks that the president had in teleprompter, just so we can understand?
I'm not understanding why that would be necessary. We always share the remarks that the president had, even delivered. That's probably going to be up on the website. Not really sure what that has to do with anything. I just answered the question about her being on top of mind. I don't think that's unusual. I feel like many of us have gone through that particular time where someone is on top of mind and you call them out. And you mention them, especially in this type of context. If you think about how he's going to see the family in 2 days, if you think about how when he sees them in 2 days, it's going to be for such an important moment, signing a piece of legislation that's going to rename a VA clinic in her state. That's important. If you think about this issue and how important this issue is, and he was, again, calling out the congressional champions for this particular issue.
Let me ask you about something else. The president's schedule tonight has him attending a political fundraiser while the storm is hitting the state of Florida. Is it still his intent to go to the fundraiser, or will he stay here at the White House and monitor the building?
So we don't have anything to any changes in his schedule. He has been really steadfast and very clear, and has spoken multiple times on what is happening in Florida and what we are seeing with Hurricane Ian and other hurricanes right before. There's Hurricane Fiona as well, as you all know. And so his administration is on top of this. He, again, signed the declaration for Florida even before landfall, right? The moment that the governor asked for assistance from us, within hours, the president signed that declaration. You can see how focused he is on it. You can see how important of an issue this is. And sadly, this is not the first extreme weather scenario that we have had to deal with under this administration for the last 19 months. And you have seen, and I think you would agree, Stephen, you have seen this administration respond with efficiency, respond with the full force of resources, and certainly take this incredibly seriously.
The schedule has press coverage of the fundraiser tonight as restricted. Is the White House willing to lift that restriction and see to it that cameras are allowed in to videotape the president's remarks?
So as you know, that's a political event, so that's something for the DNC to speak to directly.
Karina, North Korea launched 2 short-term ballistic missiles off its east coast. Does the administration see this as time to Vice President Harris's visit to the DMZ, and are there any additional security precautions being made in light of that?
So I'll say this. So as you know, North Korea has a history of doing these types of tests. So it's not it's not unusual. It is something that they do. Historically, North Korea can speak for itself on why. That's not something that I'm going to speak to from here. What I can speak to is our rock-solid commitment to the security of our Japan and South Korea allies, and the Vice President's trip is a demonstration of that commitment.
And just on the permitting bill, you put out a statement yesterday after Senator Manchin withdrew the proposal. What is the administration's view of this legislation going forward, and is there any preferred vehicle for this bill? Senator Capito suggested the NDAA might be a possibility later this year.
So a couple of things. So first, I want to say that the president wants the government to remain open, and is glad that to Congress for making progress on continuing budget resolutions. So I want to state that very clearly. But at the same time, the president believes we must pass the permitting reform bill so that the United States can realize the benefits of the historic investment in the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law as well. He supports the permitting reform, as you know, as you stated from my statement yesterday. The administration will continue to work with Congress and find the best path forward so we can enact this bill. Clearly, the Congress leads the way on the mechanisms on how bills will move forward, and so we'll leave that up to leadership. But again, we will work closely with them.
Thank you, Corinne. Yesterday, President Biden mentioned Rick Scott and Ron Johnson, as well as Kevin McCarthy, warning about those three specifically and what the country would look like if they were in control. I wondered if you could talk about whether this will continue to be a theme for the president, and also he doesn't often mention Mitch McConnell in that context with those, and so does he view McConnell as differently from some of those?
No, I wouldn't go that far. What I would say is that those are the three that have been very vocal about the GOP agenda. Those are the three that have been very vocal about putting Medicare and Social Security on the chopping blocks. When you think about when they say protect the lives of unborn children, they mean a national ban on abortion that puts doctors and nurses in jail for performing miscarriage management or saving the health of the mother. When they say, and I just mentioned this, when they say save and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, they want to slash private Social Security and put Medicare on the chopping blocks every 5 years. And so this is what we have seen from these three in particular. I mean, McCarthy was someone that we talked about because he had the GOP agenda. The GOP agenda, which does not have a commitment to the American people, which does not have a commitment in making sure that Americans get lower medical costs, our seniors get lower medical costs, or fight inflation. Matter of fact, the first thing that he wanted to do was get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act, which would actually hurt Americans. And so that is why we're calling them out. They've been very vocal and very out front about their GOP agenda, which is not about the American people, which is about their own, fight for big pharma, their own fight for wealthy special interests. And we are doing the complete opposite. We are fighting for the American people.
The president this week has talked about the importance of competition, tweeting capitalism without competition isn't capitalism, it's exploitation. There's some legislation on the Hill dealing with antitrust and big tech, including one co-sponsored by Amy Klobuchar, that's waiting for a vote to be scheduled. Is the president have any opinion on that? Is he pushing for a vote? Does he want Chuck Schumer to call for a vote on that before the election?
Don't have anything to share on that particular piece of legislation. I know that this is something that the senator has been fighting for some time and working on for some time, but the president has been very clear about his concern about the power large social media platforms have over everyday lives, and has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms that they cause. And so the president will continue to call that out. I don't have anything specific on that particular legislation.
Lastly, I just wanted to return to this question of the Congresswoman, and I think we all totally get why she's top of mind. You've made that case pretty effectively. But I think the confusing part is why, if she and the family is top of mind, does the president think that she's living and in the room?
I don't find that confusing. I mean, I think many people can speak to sometimes when you have someone top of mind, they're a top of mind, exactly that. And it is also, if you put it into the context, it's not like it happened outside of context, right? It happened at an event where we were calling out the champions, congressional champions in particular, of this issue, this important issue when it comes to food insecurity, something that this administration has led on from the beginning of this administration, not just across the country, but also globally. You heard him talk about food insecurity last week at the UN and the investments that we have put forward as the United States of America in helping deal with that. Look, he was at an event, you all saw, you all watched, which is why you're asking the question, right, where he was calling out, again, congressional leaders, a bipartisan leadership that we have seen on this particular issue. And again, he's going to see her family in just 2 days. And she was on top of mind. I mean, that is not an unusual scenario there.
Corinne, I have John Lennon top of mind just about every day, but I'm not looking around for him anywhere.
When you sign a bill for John Lennon as president, then we can have this conversation. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
These moments confusion are happening with
Why not
increased frequency.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, there are
Americans
reports
are
that
watching this and are having concerns. What do you say to that? This is a legitimate question. We need to have some answers.
At the end of the year. What can you tell us
I'm
about
sorry,
that?
somebody was yelling over you, so go ahead. Go
There are
ahead.
reports that
Go
Treasury
ahead.
Secretary Yellen is looking to leave
It is
the
not your turn to
administration.
speak, and you're being rude to your colleagues, and let your colleague answer the question. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you're yelling and over your colleague, so that is incredibly rude. So can you, go
We're just
ahead.
trying to get an
Go
answer
ahead.
for
There are
top of
reports that
mind
Treasury
kind of
Secretary
answer.
Yellen is looking to leave the administration at the end of the year. What can you tell us about those reports? And also, are you preparing for the departure of any other administration officials by the end of the year?
So as been previously reported, Chair Rouse will return to Princeton University at the end of her 2-year public service leave, likely early spring of 2023. And while we are prudently planning for potential transitions post-midterm elections, neither Secretary Yellen or Brian Deese are part of those plans.
Thanks, Corinne. I just wanted to see if you had anything more in terms of a response to the North Korea missile launches. Was the president briefed specifically on this today? And does this change the vice president's plans to visit the DMZ tomorrow?
So just some top-line things here. I'll point you to the Department of Defense statement, which assessed this test didn't pose an immediate threat to the U.S. personnel or territory of our allies. And also, the United States condemns, as we have said many times when we have seen this behavior, the DPRK's ballistic missile launches. These launches are in violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolution and poses a threat to the DPRK's neighbors and the international community. The United States is committed to the defense of our allies, South Korea, Japan, and we continue to call on North Korea to engage in diplomacy as it relates to the vice president's trip. So as you all know, on Thursday, which is tomorrow, as part of her trip to the Republic of Korea, ROK, the vice president will visit the DMZ. Nearly 70 years since the Korean armistice, the visit will underscore the strength of the U.S. ROK alliance and the United States' commitment to stand beside the ROK in the face of any threats posed by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The Vice President will tour sites at the DMZ, meet the service members, and receive an operational briefing from U.S. commanders. The Vice President will reflect on the shared sacrifice of tens of thousands of American and Korean soldiers who fought and died together, and will reaffirm the U.S. commitment to the ROK's defense in ironclad. As you just could tell, that trip is going to continue.
Thanks, Corinne. Can you address Democratic Representative Henry Cuellar's comments on Fox about the administration needing to do more on the border? He's, obviously been critical of the administration in the past, but is the White House ignoring the congressman as he appears to be contending?
So I've not seen those comments. What I can say, and what we have said many times from here, every individual encountered at the border is either expelled under Title 42 or placed in removal proceedings. That remains to be true. We are working to expedite the asylum process timing and have brought it down from years to months for many recent encounters. Of course, we could expedite the processing time even further, and you've heard me say this many times, if congressional Republicans would quit blocking our actions and start supporting the comprehensive that the president proposed on day one. And we inherited a decimated, a gutted immigration system, and the president took this so seriously that on day one, again, he put forth a comprehensive plan. So we would look forward to having congressional Republicans join us in dealing with this issue.
On the hurricane, the president had some strong words for oil and gas executives. I wanted to ask, is the White House following up individually with those executives to speak directly about these kind of concerns, Any plans of bringing them in, for example?
So I don't have any actions here to preview for you at this time, but as I've noted, wholesale gas prices have declined about 3 times as much as retail gas prices over the last month, and in addition, oil and gas companies are making record profits and need to pass these savings on the consumers at the gas pump now. So the president is making that very clear. We are making that very clear, and we'll leave it as that. If there's more to preview, we certainly will share that.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just back to Florida for a second. Can you talk a little bit about how long the conversation was between the president and the governor? And also, did they touch on any other topics, like the governor sending the migrants to Martha's Vineyard?
So the call was just focused on the hurricane, the hurricane response. There was no other topic that was discussed on the call. I don't have a timeline of how, or timing of how long the call was. I think the important thing is that the call happened, that the president was able to connect with the governor. They both agreed that they would stay in, that the president would be there to have the full force of the federal government behind Florida for the people of Florida, and they were committed to continued close coordination between the federal and state government. And so as we respond to the emergency, that was the commitment that they made. That was a conversation that was had. Again, the FEMA administrator has spoken to the governor. She spoke to governor many days ago. She said here, and I'll just reiterate, as I just said moments ago, her team has been on the ground with the governor and his team, and we will continue to work in close coordination.
Thank you so much. On the global economy, the strong dollar has an impact beyond the borders of the United States, obviously, on many countries. So is this something the administration is discussing with allies and partners, and how coordinated is the economic response? Because we get warnings about, global recession almost every day.
So the U.S. government, including the Department of Treasury, are always in touch with our allies and partners, including the U.K. on the global economy. Don't have anything further to share on that piece. But again, this is, as I mentioned, when it comes to the global economy, this is something that we are clearly watching very closely. But we feel, as I stated a second ago, that we are in a strong position. The U.S. economy is in a strong position to deal with the global challenges ahead. Good. You in the back here.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about something you said yesterday, but really quickly. Ambassador Rahm Emanuel has been in touch with the family of Navy Lieutenant Ridge Alconis, and a number of U.S. senators have sent a letter to the Japanese government asking them to revisit his case. I know the president has a lot on his plate, but is this something that he's been briefed about?
That one I would have to just check with his team, since to your point, there's just so much going on. So let me just check with this team on that particular question.
My second question is, during his second press conference, the president said of the midterm elections, "I'm not going to say it's going to be legit." His subsequent preferred voter reforms, those did not pass Congress. And then yesterday you said, "We are confident in the integrity of our elections here." My question is, what gives Biden confidence 6 weeks out from those elections that he didn't seem to have at the beginning of the year?
So can you do me a favor? Can I just go back and see his answer there? Because I want to see what context he was answering that question and how it was